Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. My name is Joe and this is a one-on-one interview once again with football finance expert Kieran Maguire, here to take us through the latest with the Manchester United ownership debacle. I'm going to say the word debacle, Kieran, because this is taking a very long time now, isn't it? What is the hold up? How are you, obviously, first of all? Sorry to jump straight to it, but what is going on here?
It would appear that the Glazers are just turned into a bunch of hustlers. They're trying to extract a little bit more money out of somebody. Joel and Avram still want to have some form of control as well. So they're trying to come up with a series of schemes which would allow them to have continuing involvement, because they feel that Manchester United is vastly undervalued by the markets, and therefore they want a share of any gain in value in future years. Why they can't get around the table and thrash out a deal is beyond most observers. And of course, you've got the transfer window about to open. Yes, there will be a budget because they qualified for the Champions League, so therefore, money has gone into a pot for that. But if one of the prospective owners was hoping to spend a lot more money, and we've seen that happen at Newcastle. We saw that happen at City and at Chelsea and at other clubs as well. Well, if the deal drags on and on until we get to the wrong end of the window, then it becomes either more difficult or you get your trousers taken down in terms of the prices which selling clubs are going to be demanding, because it becomes a seller's market, and you end up paying premium prices. And Manchester United have had that done to them too often. We saw that last summer with a poor start to the season resulted in panic buys and paying over the odds.
Yeah, I think, I don't necessarily think it was a panic buy, but I certainly think the fee that we ended up paying for Anthony is a great example of that. Someone that at the start of the window you probably could have got for around half of the eventual 80 to 100 million that we paid for him. There's been some reports this week about Jim Radcliffe sort of moving ahead in things, even going as far as to suggest that the Sheikh Jassim and the Qatari bid would be willing to pull out if they felt that things were heading in that direction. Based on what we've seen and the sort of latest in the press, where do you see things at the minute? Where do you see the current balance of things? Because, like you said, it's dragging on, but surely there's updates and new things going on behind the scenes. Where do you think things are at the moment?
It's a funny one, this, because I was put on standby by some TV stations on Friday night to say, well, we're expecting an announcement. Can you make yourself available? And then it just died. Nothing happened. Clear. One of the Glazers was across in London. Was it an opportunity to sign a few papers? It could have been people putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5. But we've been through 3 sets of bidding by all accounts. We're seeing selective leaking of information by mainly, I think, people on the Jim Radcliffe side. It just seems to have gone quite quiet. And again, listening to what some of the more investigative people from the world of journalism are saying, that they still can't work out his background. He seems to have come from nowhere. But it could be that he's just a very private guy. So it's messy. There's no justification on the Glazer side. That they bought the club for next to nothing. They're all going to make a lot of money. I think in terms of why people are saying Jim Radcliffe is ahead, is that if some of the leaks are correct, then either 2 of the Glazer children or all 6 of the Glazer children could end up with shares and money, and Jim Radcliffe ends up with 51% of the votes. So if that is the case, then in theory, the Glazers, should Manchester United's value increase, will be able to A, get cash now, and B, get cash later. Especially if it's a buyout as well, where you've got what we refer to as put and call options. And the way that these operate is the Manchester United share price now is probably about $18.70, where it could be that in 3 years, Jim Radcliffe has the option to buy the Glazers out at an agreed price of, say, $30 a share, or the Glazers can force him to buy them out at $30 a share. Under those circumstances, they make even more cash, and that's all they've done from day one as far as their relationship with Manchester United is concerned. Is used it as a cash vehicle.
So this whole Ratcliffe and the Glazers kind of working together and having this ongoing ownership, sort of shared ownership situation, just to put it into sort of layman's terms for me, and as we're chatting here, would the Glazers have any say whatsoever in the running of the club day to day? And also, would it be a sort of compulsory purchase? This thing that you mentioned there. Obviously, you don't know the exact details, and this is all rumours and leaks at this point. But would it be a case where the Glazers can still get together? Would they still have a seat on the board? Like, how do these things work? And is this sort of common practice where, a sale of this magnitude, some of the owners might stay on for a little bit with a reduced share? What sort of paint the picture of how this actually looks as a Man United fan? What will I be seeing as the owners and the controllers of Manchester United if this were to go ahead?
Right. If Sheikh Jassim's bid is successful, he buys all of the shares from the Glazers, all of the shares from the stock market, effectively takes Manchester United back to being a private company, and clearly makes all the decisions, or his advisors make all of the decisions. Mm-hmm. From what appears to be the case in relation to the Ratcliffe bid, he is not going to buy all of the shares. He's going to buy enough shares that will give him 51% of the votes. Now, 51% of the votes is important because it allows you to appoint the board of directors. So in theory, he could kick out all of the Glazers, or it could be that as part of the sale contract, 2 of the Glazers are allowed to stay on the board. Does that mean that they're making decisions? No, it isn't. Does it mean that their voice is heard when decisions are being made? Yes, it does. So, it's a bit like if you go out with the missus and you're deciding where to go on holiday. You have a viewpoint, she has a viewpoint, and then you agree with what she says. So it works like any relationship, and that would be the case with I think the proposals that are coming through. That if you've got 51%, you can appoint the majority of the board of directors in all probability, and that means that, let's say we've got 7 people on the board. Jim Radcliffe has the right to appoint 4 of them. The other 3, you might have a non-executive, you might have 2 Glazers, and then decisions are made on a majority basis. So ultimately, Jim Radcliffe's views will always be the ones which go through. I can imagine, from the perspective of a Manchester United fan, just the very thought of having a Glazer family member involved in decision making is pretty repugnant. But it's their voices being heard rather than them calling the shots, and I think that's the main difference compared to where we are as present. In terms of could it be a compulsory deal, the way the options work is that it will say that up to the 30th of June 2025, Sir Jim Ratcliffe can force the Glazers to sell shares for $30 a point, and also up to that date, the Glazers, in theory, can force Sir Jim to buy them. So it works a sort of on a compulsory basis on both ways. And then it could be that in 2026, that might go up to $32, 2027, and then the whole thing could change and it could lapse. So without seeing clearly it's private and confidential, and the lawyers and the bankers and the accountants will be all over it. But that's broadly the type of thing that could arise, and it is quite common to have these sort of type of earnouts, as sometimes referred to, in many other businesses, especially for a club such as Manchester United, which doesn't want to promote itself as a football club. It wants to be seen as part of the entertainment industry or part of the tech industry, and that's why the Glazers are digging their heels in. Apple, for example, Apple are supposed to be introducing today some sort of virtual reality headset. Now, Manchester United make around about 240, 250 million pounds a year from TV. Manchester United claim to have a fan base of 1.1 billion fans. If you can get 1% of Manchester United's fan base to pay a tenner a match, that's 100 million pounds. You do that 20 times a season, you've got 2 billion. And if you're watching the match on one of these VR headsets, you can be in K-stand, you can be in the centre circle, you can look, you can watch, observe the match from, even they'll start to embed cameras into players' shirts, so you'll be able to have a Bruno version of the match, seeing the match effectively through his eyes, and they will pitch that, and they will try to sell those rights and keep those rights. And if that is the case, people buy into that technology. Manchester United becomes a very, very, very attractive proposition because it's got this huge global fan base. But we've been there before with 3D TV, and that didn't work. Although that could be argued that sort of old school media trying to introduce something new. So that's why the Glazers are reluctant to sell, because they feel that there's good times around the corner in terms of the ability to release people's pockets. But we've been saying that for the last 20 years and nobody's managed to do it.
Yeah, that 1.1 billion number, I think there's been loads of reports about whether it's basically if you just recognise the badge or whatever it is, but this idea of, this gigantic number of potential, basically, targets for sale, isn't it? We can sell something to this many people. At some point, that could go from United making a few hundred million a year to United making a few billion a year or tens of billions a year if, like you said, these things proliferate the way that, potentially they could. I've got sort of two questions. I'll start with the first one, but just on this relationship between Radcliffe and the Glazers, which obviously I think for most or almost all United fans is not ideal. No one wants that, where the Glazers are sticking around in any capacity. The first question is, why would Jim Radcliffe allow that to happen? Because he knows, he must have had people tell him that United fans aren't going to like this. That is not going to go down well. Is it and in my head, there's two options as to why he would want to do that. One is it's the best way to win the bidding war, that offering them what they want to be able to stay on is the only way he's going to win. Or two, he doesn't have enough money to buy them out completely by himself. Are either of those things true? Do you think it's a mixture? Why is he going to allow, or is there a rumour that he would allow the Glazers to stay on in any capacity when he presumably knows United fans don't want that to happen?
I think both of those comments you've made are valid. But it's not a case of what Jim Radcliffe wants. It's what the Glazers want. Ultimately, they are in the strong position of they're selling the shares. So it's a bit like if you're selling a house, you can turn away all offers. If you're not that arsed about selling it, you go, well, unless you make me an offer that's really attractive, I'm just prepared to sit here. And that's the approach that the Glazers have taken. I don't think that Jim Radcliffe has 6 billion spare. So therefore, by buying 51% or getting control of 51%, he could possibly do that for 2.5, gets control of one of the biggest brands in world sport, and then goes on. But he's not in a position to dictate terms to the Glazers, and that's why sometimes you've got to shake the hand that feeds you, even though you don't particularly want to.
Yeah, I almost forget, as a United fan, sometimes you forget that this isn't just two fans selling Man United. These are businessmen. This is a business deal that's taking place here. And like you said, the Glazers are the ones with the control and the power, and this goes the way they want it to and not the way anyone else wants it to. Unless, Sheikh Jassim, who presumably does have, a slightly more endless pit of money, comes in and says, all right, then we'll give you 10 billion. The Glazers basically get to do it how they want to, don't they? Do you think this idea, the Qatari bid, does it feel to you as though there is this, I don't know what, it just seems to have been softened slightly in the last few weeks. We had this, this sort of rumoured extra bid that apparently went around the Rain group and straight to the Glazers. That seems like a sign that things aren't going, all to plan. Things have got a little bit scrappy. And like you said, there's less reports coming out of the Qatari side of things. Does that seem to be the case with you? I know I'm maybe putting loose ends together here, but things seem a bit less cohesive and planned from the Qatari side in recent weeks. Is that a sign to you that maybe things aren't going the way they want it to?
It could be. I mean, certainly Sir Jim appears to have the upper hand in terms of the PR war in getting the message out. And everybody's got their own pet journalists. And that's not a criticism of the parties, and it's not a criticism of the journalists. We all have contacts, and you've got contacts at the club, and they will release information. You know why they're doing it, they know why they're doing it, but it goes out on the paddock and it gets attention. So it's all part of the game that is part of mergers and acquisitions, especially for an institution where there isn't a knockout bid. Because if Sheikh Jassim comes in with 8 billion, the deal's done like that. The other Glazer children will say, this is absolutely crazy to turn this down. Manchester United was worth 2 billion 12 months ago. We're getting 4 times what we thought it was worth, and what everybody thought it was worth less than 12 months ago. They'll just snap your hand off. Where we are at present is that there's not a lot of difference between the two bids. They are different in style. And the Glazers are dithering in the same way that David Moyes dithered when he was trying to sign Fellaini. Couldn't make his mind up. Should I get him? Should I put another bid? And it's just a pain in the backside. Regardless of which side of the bidding war an individual person takes, you want the deal sorted, and then you can get on with the future of Manchester United. The Glazers are like an anchor dragging the club, holding the club back, because the people who are involved in decision making at board level, Richard Arnold, who by all accounts has made a really positive impression. Ed Woodward was a bit of a ditherer himself. That is difficult for him to move on, because Joel and Avram want consulting on practically everything there. They're not micromanaging to the same extent as Daniel Levy at Spurs, and we've seen what a mess that's resulted in terms of the progress on the pitch, but they're not that far behind.
That dithering, it almost feels a bit like sort of Succession, where Malcolm Glazer was the one who sort of made all the money, and now you've got these kids who are thrust into being businessmen, but actually every time you see all the business they do, they take their time, they make mistakes, there's no end of wasting time and wasting money because they're not decisive enough. The second question is, what do you expect Radcliffe to do about this PR problem? Because if he keeps the Glazers on, people aren't going to like that. How do you see, I know this is more of a PR question than a finance question, but there has to be some strategy involved in telling the United fans, we've bought the club. The good news is the Glazers don't run the club. The bad news is they still own 25% or whatever it may be. How do you see that being tackled? Because that's a PR nightmare in the making if Jim Radcliffe was to win the bidding war.
Okay, the way you do it is you buy better players, you win football matches, you win trophies, and everybody says it's all down to Sir Jim, and we forget about the Glazers.
Yeah, just pretty simple.
Just deliver. Isn't it?
I don't think anyone will be upset with United winning a couple of Premier Leagues in the next 5 years. That'll make you forget that the Glazers are, hopefully on their way out, but maybe still closer than to the boardroom than we'd like. The season is now over as of Saturday afternoon, unfortunately, ending in a loss. Do you expect things to sort of accelerate now? Do you think there was rumours, wasn't there, in the build-up that something had happened? Like you said, you were on call on Friday that something had happened, but they weren't announcing it till after the game. Well, the game finished 2 days ago, and we've not seen anything. Do you think that that's going to be accelerated now that the season's over, or is it just Glazers taking a long time like Glazers do?
I honestly thought that progress was being made from a few sources, and then, as you said, it last 48 hours, radio silence yet again, and we've been through this, building up hopes, then goes into effectively a news blackout. Then the cycle starts up again. The window opens. Is it the 14th, the 16th of June, something like that? It's absolutely essential that there's some degree of clarity, because what's the point in the Glazers effectively sanctioning transfers, and then the new owner comes in and says, well, look, the Glazers had agreed a budget of, let's say, £200 million. My budget was 350. So therefore, I wouldn't have signed those two players, because we could have gone to a different point in the market. And now you don't want to end up in a similar position to Chelsea, whereby you end up buying lots of different players of the same position, and then 12 months later you're either in a fire sale, or you've got an unhappy dressing room because there's a lack of coordination, and you've got some players who are on the periphery. That doesn't make for a happy camp.
No. Thank you for coming on. I will end with this, and I think I asked you this last time, and I'll probably ask you this the next time we speak, if and when we do. Who do you think will be the next Manchester United owner? Because you've seen it all as it's unfolded. You know more about how these tens of business deals tend to go, more of an expertise than certainly I have. Based on what you know about business, how these things tend to go in other arenas, who do you think will be the next Man United owner?
I'd go 60-40 in favour of Sir Jim Radcliffe. And I'm going to stick my neck out here, and you can go and slaughter me. I think it'll be done by the end of June.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Right. Whoever it is, let's get it done in the next few weeks, because, that scenario of, what have you bought him for? You could have bought someone 3 times as expensive as that. We're going to give you loads of money. That is a nightmare, isn't it? United have already bought 3 players at this level when we could have been shopping here. That could be a real sort of dangerous position to be in. So thank you, Kieran, for coming on. Make sure you check out Kieran. Make sure you check out The Price of Football as well. Thank you for coming on. You can get back to all the work you were doing before and that we interrupted. So cheers, mate. Thank you.
All the best, Joe. Take care. Love to all at the Paddock.
Thank you very much. Right, that's going to be all from us. This has been a one-on-one interview with football finance expert Kieran Maguire. Hit subscribe, get your thoughts in on the ownership below as well, and we'll see you in a bit.